Good morning. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Angela, and we're the Castros.
We bring you the news.
And the views that make you think.
Sometimes we agree.
Sometimes we don't.
This is News and Views.
And here are today's headlines.
Fuel prices are set for a big-time rollback, with diesel expected to fall by over 20 pesos per liter this week.
Lawmakers convene a House mega panel hearing on the government's response to the fuel crisis.
Over at the Senate, the Protect Committee is holding a hearing on the challenges and impact of the ongoing oil crisis.
Crackdown on fake news intensifies as government urges stricter platform accountability.
First on the news, lawmakers are now taking a closer look at the energy crisis in the country, with the House mega panel hearing currently in session. Let's watch this.
We have organized our briefing into four main parts. For this morning, we will hear updates on the energy supply and stability, covering fuel supply, pricing mechanisms, and ongoing efforts to secure and diversify our energy sources. Secondly, we will examine the status of subsidy and ayuda programs, their implementation, sustainability, and targeting mechanisms. Third, we will focus on the transport sector, which remains among the most directly affected by the rising fuel costs. And fourth, we will tackle the situation of food, agriculture, and the fishery sectors, recognizing that rising fuel prices inevitably translate into higher food costs and increased pressure on our farmers and fisherfolk. Allow me to emphasize that this will not be our last meeting. We will continue to convene as a joint committee in the coming days to ensure that all sectors, especially the most vulnerable and the middle class, are given the attention and support they require. But for today, our focus is clear: to address the fundamental cross-cutting issues that determine whether a Filipino family can put food on the table, whether a worker can afford to go to work, and whether our economy can remain stable amid continued uncertainty. And finally, to ensure that we are able to hear from all our sectors, allow me to just briefly lay out the conduct of today's discussion, and I implore the indulgence of my colleagues. Interpellations will be limited to 5 members per topic, 2 from the minority and 3 from the majority for each topic session. Each member shall be given a maximum of 5 minutes, excluding the answer, and excluding also the discussions coming from the chairpersons. At the conclusion of all 4 segments, we will open the floor for more extensive discussions to other members during the open forum. These guidelines have been shared with all our members prior to this session. We ask for understanding and cooperation. Pakikiusap sa ating mga kasama para magkaroon tayo ng focused, orderly, at productive discussion sa ating mga kasamahan. At ang ating tungkulin sa kumiting ito ay hindi lamang magtanong, kundi mas mahalaga maghanap ng konkretong solusyon. Mga solusyon na hindi lamang para sa kasalukuyang krisis, kundi upang masiguro na sa susunod na pagsubok, kung darating man ito, mas handa ang ating ekonomiya, mas protektado ang ating mga mamamayan, at mas matatag ang ating bansa. Magandang umaga, maraming salamat po. May I recognize our colleagues who are here today. If they wish to make a statement, you are free to do so. May I, from that with the highest SALN, I recognize the Honorable Jose Pepito Alvarez, Chairman of the Committee on Energy. Manong, if you have some words, please.
Magandang umaga sa lahat. Hopefully, matatapos tayo today, but we hope that yung meeting natin ay patuloy upang mabalangkas natin yung gagawain sa Mayo para magkaroon tayo ng komprehensibong paghahanda sa hindi lang itong Middle East crisis ngayon, kung hindi sa mga darating pang mga crisis. Maraming salamat, and we hope for everyone's cooperation. Thank you.
Maraming salamat. From the Committee on Agriculture, the Chairman, Congressman Mark McCormick Inverga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. In the interest of time, Mr. Chair, given that there are so many agencies with us today, but I'd like to thank Secretary Rex Gatchalian for joining us today. In the interest of time, Mr. Chair, I will reserve my right to submit in writing my brief opening statement, and I hope for a very fruitful discussion in today's hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Maraming salamat. From the Committee on Transportation, I'd like to call our chairperson, the Honorable Congressman Franz Pumarin.
Thank you. Good morning. Of course, we'd like to acknowledge the presence of Acting Secretary Banoy. Alam naman po natin, ang pinaka-apektadong sektor dito is yung transport sector. So, for sure, marami po tayong katanungan and I reserve my opening statement later in writing na lang. Thank you.
The transport sector will be taken up later from 2:30 to 4:30 this afternoon. The chairman has many suggestions and questions. We will take that up later. From the chairperson of the Information and Communication Technology, I would like to recognize Honorable Migs Villafuerte.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair, at magandang umaga sa lahat. For the interest of time, para po mabilis at makastart na po tayo, tulad po ng sinabi ng aking mga kasama dito, na sana maging lively at open ang ating discussion sa ating mga kasamaan sa iba't ibang departments. Maraming salamat po sa inyong presence. Lalo na sa DICT, mamaya na lang po ako magtatanong and heads up lang, it will be regarding the rampant spread of false and fake news na talagang nakapagkalat ng misinformation sa ating bansa through social media. So mamaya na lang po yun at sana maging productive at mabilis ang ating usapan para po sa sambayan ng Pilipino. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat. Congressman Chairman Mark Inverga, would you do the honors of recognizing our colleagues who are present today?
Yes, thank you. On behalf of the Honorable Chair Miro Kimbo, the lead committee would wish to acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Gerardo Jeriboy Espina, the Honorable Brian Poe, the Honorable Hil Cabarangay Acosta, the Honorable Kenneth Gatchalian, the Honorable Jennifer Lagbas, the Honorable former President and former Speaker Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, the Honorable Walfredo Arman Dimagila Jr., the Honorable James Jojo Ang Jr., the Honorable Ricardo Cruz Jr., the Honorable Iris Marie de Mesa Montes, the Honorable Jonathan Keith Flores, the Honorable Arthur Yap, the Honorable Rufus Rodriguez, the Honorable Yevgeny Vicente Bambi Emano, Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Rene Luis Co, the Honorable Percival Percy Sendanya, the Honorable Leandro Ligarda Leviste, the Honorable Antonio Tino, and the Honorable Sarah Jane Elago. Maraming salamat po for joining us in today's lead joint committee hearing.
We also have 78 members who are on Zoom. We will recognize you a little bit later. Is there another? Go ahead, Chairman Mark.
Yes, thank you. And would like to also acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Jay Vergara. Thank you, sir, for joining us. And the Honorable Leo Rodriguez and the Honorable Tina Talavera Lopez. And the Honorable Deputy Speaker Christine Singson. Our apologies. Medyo nadidelay, Mr. Chair, yung pagdala ng mga... And the Honorable Eli San Fernando is with us today.
Good morning again, everyone. I'd like to recognize the Cabinet Secretaries who are here today, who's taken time in the order of arrival. The Honorable Secretary Rex Gatchalian of the SWD. The Honorable Secretary Renato Solidum of the OST. The Acting Secretary of the DOTR, Acting Secretary Giovanni Z. Lopez. Did I miss anyone? I think Secretary Sharon Garin is already here. Am I correct? Where she's not, so...
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Secretary Garin is in Senate hearing.
So she prioritized the Senate over the House hearing? Is that what you're saying?
No, sir. I'm just saying she is attending the Senate hearing, sir.
I think the better answer is she also sent a equally competent individual to answer to these questions. So, having said that, this morning's session, for everyone's benefit, we'll be dealing with the updates coming from the Department of Energy, who has a presentation, I believe. Undersecretary Sales, please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. We can have the slides up, please. Good morning to all the honorable members of the Lead Joint Committee. Yeah. So while waiting for the slides, yes, it's day 44 since hostilities broke out last February 28, and today is April 13, 44 days since the start. The only major intervening event since we last met was the agreement to a 2-week ceasefire. And this now is reflected in this week's pump price adjustments. Next slide, please. Just to put it in graphical form, Feb 28 to April 13, the ceasefire was agreed last April 8, so it's holding but a bit tenuous. The headline story here is that after the meeting face-to-face in Islamabad, both parties left Islamabad still quite a distance apart. So, in practical terms, there are limited number of vessels still able to cross the Strait of Hormuz. Next slide, please. This just shows the movement of the prices of the commodities. The orange line is Dubai crude. The important line here is the red line, diesel. So when the hostilities broke out, before that, there's a constant separation from crude oil and diesel. This is what is known as the crack spread. As hostilities broke out, the red line diverges much, much faster, rising. This is diesel against the Dubai price. So essentially, the crack spread between the crude oil and the final product, diesel, has spread. It was highest at about $66 after the declaration of the ceasefire. This went down to $44. Still, the situation is tenuous, and how things move forward is still very much uncertain. Next slide, please. This is a summary of the movement since the start up to the present time. So in diesel, we had prices before the crisis from between 48 to 65 pesos per liter. Year to date, the increase is up to 82 pesos. And for this week, the DOE is estimating a range from between 105 to 147 pesos per liter. So that's about a 20 peso decrease coming in by Tuesday, tomorrow. All the products follow a similar trajectory, but diesel leads in terms of the actual pump price increase, followed by kerosene. In LPG, this is priced from the monthly quote of Aramco. The pricing is during the end of the month, the last week. So our April pricing was the close of March, which increased by over $243 per metric ton. So now this is reflected in the domestic market. The 11-kilogram tank is now ranging from 1,100 to 1,600 pesos. Next slide. So the increases are broken down here, so you can see the consecutive increases in petroleum prices. The record increase was attained in the week of March 17 to 23, where the increase was about 22 pesos per liter. This week, by tomorrow, we are expecting an adjustment downward of between 20 to 21 pesos. So there's some relief, but as mentioned earlier, this is primarily due to the 2-week ceasefire, and anything that happens until the end of the 2 weeks will definitely affect the movement of the price in the coming weeks. Next slide. Okay, we're showing here the LPG prices, so you can see the big effect. Before the war, it was about $542 per metric ton. After it was priced in, our April prices are now at $785 per metric ton. Like I mentioned earlier, the increase is about 243.50 cents per metric ton. This translates to a retail price in our 11 kilogram LPG tanks from 1,141 to 1,630 pesos. A targeted subsidy to affected households is the immediate relief that can be considered for this increase in LPG prices. In terms of our inventory, next slide please. So the latest is the green bars, which top of the product scale. So as you can see, generally there's little movement in LPG. Actually, we've increased our in-country stocks and confirmed orders from last week's 34 days to this week's 36. In diesel, again, there's a slight increase from last week of 47 days to 49 days this week, and a slight drop in gasoline from 60 to 54. The summary is on the right panel. Through the crisis, the general levels of inventories have been maintained. Next slide, please. Now, these are projected forward scenarios where in scenario A, we consider a status quo where the ceasefire holds and that potentially gets extended for further talks. So in this situation, potentially diesel could go down to 90 to 105 pesos per liter. If the scenario holds for 4 to 6 weeks. Scenario B.
That is the ongoing House Mega Panel hearing on the impact of the energy crisis. And now, for more update, over at the House of Representatives, we have mobile journalist Amy Atienza. Amy, what do you have for us?
Morning, Angela, Diego. Dito nga ay tuloy-tuloy na rin ang pagdinig ng iba't ibang komite sa House of Representatives tungkol nga dito sa oil crisis. Pero bago pa nga yan, nakita na rin natin kagabi na nag-file din ng Kalinga Bill itong si House Speaker Bogie D, pati na rin si Majority Leader Sandro Marcos, na sumasang-ayon nga din dito no, sa sinasagawa ng lead committee. So technically, mabibigyan ito ng automatic aid yung mga apektado talaga itong oil crisis. At bukod pa dyan, no, Angela, Diego, nagbigay na rin ng pahayag no, itong si Speaker Bogie tungkol nga din sa price rollback na inanunsyo din daw ni Pangulong Bongbong Marcos at sinasabi niya magkakaroon daw ito ng positive development, lalo na tuloy-tuloy pa rin talaga ang usapin no, dito sa Kamara patungkol nga doon sa mga kinakailangan no, na gawin para nga maasistehan itong mga, hindi lang yung transportation sector, maging yung mga fisher folk, pati yung members no, ng agricultural sector. So yan yung tinitingnan pa. And today, aabangan din daw natin syempre kung paano nga ba makakaapekto yung mga nangyayari pa ngayon sa Filipino families, Filipino workers, pati na rin sa economy, at titingnan natin kung ano nga ba yung pwede nilang gawin din no, para maging stable yung magiging daloy din ng ating ekonomiya, given na may mga phenomena na nga din na nangyayari no, sa pagtaas ng presyo hindi lang sa transportation sector, maging sa mga pagkain, pati sa kuryente. Angela, Diego?
Yes, Amy, aside from the impact of fuel crisis sa agriculture and transportation, is there also a talk about discussions on the impact naman sa labor and employment? Because that is also a major concern here.
Yun nga, tulad na nabanggit ko kanina, isa din sa mga pag-uusapan no, ay kung paano nga ba magagawan din ang paraan yung sa Filipino families and also Filipino workers. Kasi kung makikita din natin at kung babalikan natin yung nangyaring hearing din dito nung April 8 ng Joint Committee or ng Lead Committee dito sa Kamara, nasabi na rin kasi na may magiging malaking epekto ito sa ekonomiya, lalo na sa employment rate ng ating bansa. So technically, titingnan natin kung ano nga ba yung measures at yung mga saligang batas na planong ilabas nitong Lead Committee para nga matulungan naman yung mga Filipinos, lalo na yung mga OFWs na hindi pa makakabalik at na-repatriate dito sa bansa.
Well, although we don't know what's going to happen sa war, no, that is very uncertain, ika nga. Pero ano ba yung pinaka-timeline ng mega panel hearing na ito ng House of Representatives para naman maramdaman na no, ng mga kababayan natin yung agarang tulong na kinakailangan?
So technically no, Angela, kung mabalikan lang din natin dito sa Kamara, no, meron nating mga hearings before kung saan nga napag-usapan na rin itong suspension ng excise tax. Tingnan natin kung tuloy pa ito. Pero today, sa April 15 and April 16, ay magkakaroon nga ng mga pagdinig dito ang Joint Committee or ang Lead Committee para nga matalakay pa kung ano ba yung mga solusyon na pwede nilang gawin para nga dito sa oil crisis na kinakaharap. Technically, magkakaroon lang ng break bukas dahil nga bukas yung araw na yon no, para sa pagdinig ng impeachment case ni Vice President Sara Duterte. So yan din ang titingnan natin dahil marami-rami nga no, yung mga mapapag-usapan at matatalakay sa Kamara ngayong linggo.
Lastly, Amy, doon din sa isang naging suggestion ni Congressman Lamanzares regarding the use of the Maharlika Fund, no, para doon sa ating dito sa nangyayari sa energy crisis natin. Meron bang update doon? Pag-uusapan din ba yun today?
So far no, wala pa tayo naririnig, pero most likely makakarinig din tayo no ng mga possible projects and programs na i-activate nga nitong Lead Committee para nga magtuloy-tuloy no yung tulong na ibibigay sa mga Pilipino, lalo na dun sa mga apektado. Kanina nakita na rin natin no sa presentation no yung naging bigay na tulong pagdating nga dito sa Malampaya Fund, maging doon sa subsidies na ibinibigay hindi lamang sa mga jeepney drivers, maging sa mga TNBS drivers, tricycle drivers, pati mga MC taxi riders. So yon yung tuloy-tuloy nating titingnan at antabayanan dito mismo sa magiging pagdinig ng Lead Committee para nga dito sa kinakaharap ng mga Pilipino, lalong-lalo na dahil nga sa oil crisis na nangyayari.
All right, thank you so much for the updates. That was our mobile journalist, Amy Atienza. Amid rising prices, a small act of kindness in Marikina is helping drivers get through the day, one hot meal at a time. Mobile journalist Daniel Daya with the story.
In a time of rising costs, one hot meal can mean one less expense. And in Marikina, a small-scale restaurant offers free meals to drivers on the road. Since April 6, a simple initiative of Chining's Kitchen Stories has grown into a quiet lifeline, reaching more than 1,600 drivers trying to make ends meet.
Nagpapasalamat ako, imbis na malaking tulong din sa amin to. Kung ipapagas namin, di ibibili namin ito, di pagas na namin. Kaya maraming salamat sa tulad ni Sir Jason na may malasakit sa tulad ng mga driver.
Nakituloy yung may nagbibigay ng pagkain kasi malang bili ngayon. Imbis na pambili ng pagkain sa mga sarili ko, yung pera na binambibili ko, di, pamilya na lang napupunta.
Different with the goal not just food, but a full meal with protein, carbs, and vegetables.
Everyday na iba-iba po tayo.
Yes, never pa nag-uulit this round. Nung first round, dahil galing pa yon sa out of pocket, we did pancit bihon na super loaded with veggies. Kasi ang tinitignan din ng restaurant ay, can we give full calorie intake for our riders? Dapat may protein, may carbs, and merong mga ingredients na magpapalakas sa kanila.
But this is not the first time the restaurant has extended help in times of crisis, as it has its volunteer network, Tuloy PH.
So ito pong ginagawa natin para sa mga drivers ngayon, hindi po siya bago sa Trainings Kitchen Stories. Tuloy is the Filipino word to continue. So gusto natin to yung mga tao to understand or to feel that they should have strength to continue sa buhay nila, sa araw nila. And if we can do that, just with one hot meal at a time, gagawin po natin.
To keep the initiative going for as long as it can, the restaurant relies on support and cash donations.
I mean, from the start, ang halos lahat out of pocket. But the next iteration, nakita namin yung kindness explosion ng mga tao. So, nakikita natin yung pagsasama-sama ng different sectors in the food and hospitality industry. Hanggang may ingredient na lulutuin, hanggang may LPG, hanggang may pambili ng LPG, gagawin natin siya.
And for some riders, the feeding has now become part of their routine, saying it's not just about the meal, but the relief it brings.
Saktong-sakto nga po, merienda time. Ay hanggang gabi na po kasi ang biyahe namin ngayon eh. So wala na kaming iisipin pa na dinner. Kaya sakto na to sa amin. Malaking tulong po. At least hindi na kami bibili. Parang nasisave na namin yon. Maraming salamat po.
At a time when many Filipinos continue to struggle, a simple one hot meal can go a long way. Kapatid Mobile journalist Daniel Dayaw, we are One News.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning. You're still watching News and Views here on One News. Following weeks of rising fuel costs, a big-time price rollback may finally be in sight. Here's the report.
This week, jeepney driver John Marie says business has been slow along his route from Nagtahan to Paco, Manila. With fewer passengers, he expects minimal earnings again. Despite the expected rollback, he says it will have little impact.
Sa 20 pesos, sir. Sa akin lang, sir. Maliit pa yan, sir, sa amin. Na rollback.
Another driver, Relly De La Cruz, also doubts the rollback will help. He says the reduction is too small compared to the massive price increases since last month.
Hindi pa rin po dahil halos triple po yung tinas na diesel magmula nung gera ng Iran sa Iraq. Dati magkano yung diesel natin? Naglalaro sa 56. Ikukumpara natin sa ngayon, magkano na? 148 kada litro. I-rollback nila sa 20 pesos. Hindi pa rin po sapat yun.
According to the Department of Energy, fuel prices for April 14 to 20 may see rollbacks. Diesel by over 20 pesos per liter, gasoline by 4 pesos, and kerosene by more than 8 pesos. The adjustments are based on movements in the international market. But Energy Secretary Sharon Garin says it isn't likely for prices to return to 60 pesos per liter. Industry sources add that the ceasefire between the United States, Israel, and Iran also contributed to the expected price drop. However, Transport Group Manibela is calling for more action. They urge the government to suspend value-added tax and excise tax on fuel to provide real relief for drivers and commuters. The group also questions the government's price computations, saying rollback figures should be more accurate and reflect global market rates.
Yung pong pag-rollback ay hinuhula-hulahan, hindi po ba meron tayong sariling computation sana rito kung magkano po talaga ang dapat i-rollback, kung magkano po ang ibinawas nyo sa world market. Kung rollback na yun, dapat po talaga ibaba na po, ibalik po dun sa dati.
Commuters also say a one-time rollback is not enough, as they continue to feel the impact of rising prices of basic goods.
Hindi sapat. Hindi sapat. Dahil sa, tingnan mo, bilihin, yung mga kulang. Pero sana naman maayos na ng gobyerno yung problema natin. Oo, tumataas nga sahod, pero bilihin naman, tumataas din. Wala na rin, kaya tipid.
The rollback will take effect on April 14. The following day, the government will roll out a service contracting program that will last 2 to 3 months, under which drivers will be paid directly by the government to ensure continuous operations. A fuel subsidy will also be implemented, with the government covering 10 pesos per liter for public utility vehicles.
Now, the Senate Protect Committee is conducting a hearing on issues and challenges related to the oil crisis. Let's watch this.
Measures that are now going on. We are pushing for flexible working arrangements, not just in government, but also in the private sector. And we may be considering measures to further encourage flexibility of working arrangements. DOE has been working with industry on staggered implementation of fuel price increases. Would like to believe that without those efforts, the prices could have been more abrupt. The changes in the prices could have been more abrupt than otherwise what we have even witnessed, abrupt as they were already. There are key measures that we would want to see, and I also see this in your report, Mr. Chair, is the importation of biofuels, perhaps just for in times of periods or crisis like challenges like this, the ban or the restriction on the importation of biofuels may be relaxed a bit so that we can enhance the availability of critical fuel. Building strategic fuel reserves. I think we, Sec Sharon Garin here will be in a better position to be talking about that. But I think there is, in your report also shows the critical importance of revisiting that posture. Then I also would like to pitch that temporarily allowing the use of lower standard fuels. I see that many countries, including developed countries, in times of crisis like this, could allow for importation of lower grade and cheaper fuels, as well as the perhaps lifting of the coal moratorium. I know how sensitive we are to the RE transition, but I think that even Japan, Germany, Italy are revisiting their renewable energy transition, delaying it a bit so that they could respond to the challenges of the current global situation. So it doesn't seem to me a bad idea at all to also think about delaying a bit our transition so that we can diversify our sources of energy and make our industries retain their competitiveness. So, and finally, I think, Mr. Chair, in this issue, I would like to, and I think Sec Sharon shared with us here the need to accelerate the energy source diversification. I think we need to diversify, not just talking about pushing for REs, but other sources of energy, including perhaps looking at nuclear energy, which many countries now are looking at also possibilities. Okay. In the next two remaining slides, Mr. Chair, we also indicated our interventions in providing assistance to our OFWs. Our Secretary Hans is here, so I can skip that, and I believe he will discuss that, provide details later. But what I would like to focus on in the next two slides, Mr. Chair, final slides, are the our estimates of what might be a requirement for us to address the issue. But before that, I would just like to point out that there are some errors in the numbers, particularly on the third column, 105.9. That should be 47.5 because the 10 peso subsidy, fuel subsidy, instead of 37.9 is actually 11.0. That's based on the last numbers that our OES, or the Office of Secretary, has been compiling from the submissions of our agencies. Similarly, the service contracting program is not 37.4 for the 3 months, but 6.0. So that's less than what, much less than what is indicated there. And there are two set of numbers here, Mr. Chair. The 3 months, what are the likely requirements for the next 3 months, assuming that we'll just focus on targeted assistance to vulnerable sectors and groups, particularly on transport and fuel and our OFWs and the social protection. In the next slide, for example, is food subsidy. You can see the food security. You can see the numbers there. The fertilizer subsidy being expected to be a large component. Sekico may have a different number later on, but these are the ones that we were working based on our desk estimates or based on available data. But again, of course, there are other considerations like the absorptive capacity, the administrative capacity to implement targeted programs should be likewise looked into. And then there are others that here that is not, I am not quite sure yet about what the DSWD will be showing, Mr. Chair, but the social protection for the poor and then near poor, that's what's going to be quite a big amount. As you have indicated also in your preliminary report, the inflation, the surge in inflation has reduced the purchasing power of the assistance provided to the poor, the for peace in particular. If we don't augment the subsidy, many of those beneficiaries will actually slide back to the ranks of the poor. And that's probably what we do not want to see, and we need to protect them. That's what we call the vertical expansion. The other part is the horizontal expansion. Many of those individuals and households who have just become non-poor, but they're not so far away from the threshold, poverty threshold, will now find themselves vulnerable and can become poor. And so we also need to protect those individuals. They run into millions, and that's what constitute a big part of the budget. And but I believe these are very worthy, very highly desirable social investments, Mr. Chair. And so the total amount of all this for the first 3 months would be about something like 146.8. Again, I would like to stress these are very indicative numbers. They're not final. There will be in the next few days. We'll be sitting down with the implementing agencies to get the finalize the numbers for at least for the April to June, and we have more time to work on the 6 months. So in the last slide, Mr. Chair, is essentially an indication of whether or not we are able to fund those measures that I indicated. And based on the works of our colleagues in the BM, they've indicated to us that from the continuing 2025 appropriation and the 2026 appropriation, we could identify 238 billion amount of resources for the intervention. About half of that has actually been released to the agencies as of April 1. It's 125 billion, and we still have to check whether release meant that they are already actually spent or disbursed. And then the remaining part of that is 113.4 billion. So if I look at those numbers, Mr. Chair, versus what the first 3 months from April to June, I think that we can safely cover that, the short-term measures, as long as, again, our approach is targeted and then as I said, if the tension in the Middle East will extend to the next 6 months, that is July to December, then obviously the demand for resources will be much greater. And
Well, that was the Senate committee hearing on Protect Committee discussing the oil crisis and the responses that government has as options. But don't go away because we're not done yet. Please stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching News and Views here on One News. Ahead of the House Committee on Justice hearing into the impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte, her camp is moving to counter key allegations expected to be raised by her alleged bagman, Ramil Madriaga. Here is a report.
On Tuesday, April 14, the House Committee on Justice will tackle the impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte. But even before the hearing, the Vice President's camp is now trying to dismantle possible testimony from her alleged bagman Ramil Madriaga, who is expected to appear before the House. Vice President's lawyer, Attorney Paulo Panelo, said Duterte and Madriaga do not know each other. The camp also presented a December 12 text message from Madriaga where he was said to have been forced to fabricate stories about the confidential funds. Panelo said this is clear evidence that the testimony against VP Sara is fabricated, added that Madriaga has a clear motive to get out of prison.
For us, this is clear evidence na gawa-gawa lang yung testimony against VP Sara, and there's a clear motive on Madriaga's part to do this, which is to get out of prison.
The Vice President's camp is confident that whatever Madriaga says at the House hearing can be disproven.
We can definitively prove that he's a fraud. So we don't have concerns that he's testifying. The only concern really is that baka may maniwala because I'm sure it's going to be amplified.
They added that his statements may even strengthen the perjury complaint filed against him.
Marami siyang mga allegations doon na walang petsa, walang eksaktong petsa, walang mga pangalan ng mga taong pinag-deliveran niya, di umano, mga date, mga oras, ganyan. Walang specific details kaya hindi ma-verify or sadyang hindi ma-verify kasi masyadong broad. So kung magpro-provide siya ng additional details sa House Justice Committee, talagang gagamitin namin yun against him.
Meanwhile, Madriaga's lawyer, Attorney Raymond Palad, rejected claims that his client is the weakest link, saying this is an attempt to discredit him before he testifies. Palad said Madriaga is ready to testify under oath and welcomes scrutiny in the proper forum where evidence, not press briefings, should determine credibility. Committee Chairperson Representative Jervil Ruistro earlier said the proceedings will be clarificatory in nature, focused on determining whether the complaint has sufficient grounds.
Communications Office and the Department of Information and Technology are urging Meta to act swiftly against the spread of fake news online. Officials called on Meta to implement stronger measures to combat false and misleading content, particularly on issues like oil prices and the economy. They warn that misinformation poses a growing threat to public order, economic confidence, and national security. The government is also asking Meta to improve content monitoring, speed up takedowns, and establish a 24/7 coordination channel with authorities. Officials say failure to act promptly could lead to regulatory and legal action.
Good morning, Sir Diego, Ma'am Angela. Thank you for having me again.
Alright, gano'n na ba kaseryoso po yung yung pagkalat ng fake news? Ang dami kasi, especially now, yung mga sa oil prices, ang dami nagpo-post ng fake prices, ng fake news. Can you give us or paint us a picture of how bad it is?
Well, right ang ina-adapt it so bad that we're advocating that a zero trust policy when it comes to everything and anything on the internet is being consumed. So, ibig sabihin na we're at the point that by default, dapat pinagdududahan natin yung mga nakokonsume natin on the internet, especially when it comes to news, even sponsored sites for scams, for shopping. So this is the point where talagang medyo it's sad, but it's a safety mechanism that we have to adopt.
Yeah, as like you said, zero trust policy, no? So in other words, any content that you may see online, you should not take it anymore at face value. Kumbaga, regardless if you think it's true.
Fact check all the time.
Oo, fact check all the time. Ganun ba ang hinihingi mo? Ano yung mga avenues for fact checking?
So, yes, tama ho. Yun yung concept ng zero trust policy that whatever you consume, pagdudahan mo. And the fact checking that we advocate is go directly to the legitimate sources. For example po, a news would state that someone said this, go straight to their Facebook page, yung mga verified pages ho nila. Or if a government agency said this, go straight to their website. Marami naman dyan. Right now, talagang kailangan natin gawin yan in order for us to get the right information for us to make the right decisions.
Exactly. Tapos ang nakikita pa natin problema dito, even the established news organizations are being attacked, no? Saying na sila mismo ang nagsispread daw ng fake news. Kumbaga parang sinasabi nila wala ring yung iba, no, on the other side of the fence na hindi rin daw dapat pagkatiwalaan. So, paano yun, di ba? Paano titignan yun?
So, hindi nga lang yun, Ma'am Angela, even the fact-checkers are being attacked.
Yes.
So even the sources mismo, sasabihin na, pag halimbawa, kunwari CICC, may sinabi CICC, even CICC would be attacked for spreading fake news daw. Kasi kami na yung sino-source out nila na source ng balita na yun.
Oo. So how helpful it is na itong sinasabi ni Yusek Claire Castro from PCO na magkakaroon ng website para doon mag-report ng mga fake news online?
So it's really helpful for us to determine po unang-una the sources of the fake news para malaman natin so we can take actions against them if it crosses it or crosses the boundaries ng cybercrime na, so we can go after them. And I think it's important for us to have this repository of alleged fake news so we can concentrate and focus all our efforts with regards to fact-checking dito sa mga mapopost dito sa website na to. Ang tinitingnan lang namin sa CICC na baka danger nito is ma-flood to ng both with legitimate at saka yung mga manufactured fake news para talagang ang tinatawag namin dyan yung effective DDoS, yung denial of service. Ibig sabihin, you're so flooded with information na hindi mo na talaga magampanan yung trabaho mo kasi sinasadyang i-flood ng information yung para ma-overwhelm ka.
Yeah.
Understand that you're in coordination with Meta. Pero napag-usapan niyo rin po ba about the issue of yung mga paid verification on certain pages sa Meta platform? Kasi ako mismo naka-experience, verified page siya ng isang resort. And then nung tinignan ko yung, hinanap ko syempre sa Waze yung directions to get there, sana for the holidays. Nung nakita sa resort, iba pala yung spelling. When I check the original site sa Facebook, walang verification. So kasi it's so easy to get verified, babayaran mo lang, i-present a fake ID, bine-verify ka kaagad ng Meta.
Tama po, Sir Diego, na in fact that was one of our conversations with Meta. Hindi lang yun, pati yung mga sponsored sites nila, parang walang verification kahit sino pwede na lang mag-advertise on their sponsored site. So it's a continuous conversation we're having. Ang mahirap lang dito, Sir Diego, Ma'am Angela, that our conversations are very much delayed and procrastinated because ang kausap namin nasa ibang bansa. Yung mga kausap namin dito sa Pilipinas do not have the authority or pass us on sa mga mga units nila outside the Philippines.
Well, the DICT has urged Meta, no, through their executive officer, Chief Executive Officer Mark Zuckerberg, na pabilisin nga, 'di ba, yung mga hakbangin para kasi ang hirap when you report a certain fake post or a page, ang hirap ng pag-take down nila, 'di ba? So anong ginagawa natin? So what can we do para mas mapabilis 'yon na talagang ma-take down itong fake news na to bago pa mag-spread online?
So, to be fair din sa local representative nila dito, yung in-country representative nila dito, paano naman siya, very cooperative naman siya, and he acknowledges that there are problems, that there are challenges when it comes to yung pag-implement nila because nga, regional lang treatment Ang gusto sana natin, localized country-specific yung treatment pagdating sa, for example, in the Philippines kasi, Philippines is a growing democracy still, and this threat of fake news is really hampering the development of the Philippines. So, kailangan ganun ang treatment sa atin. Na ang fake news, critical issue siya. Hindi siya issue lang ng freedom of expression. So, di ba? So, that's the conversation we're trying to have. But again, the challenge is, nasa ibang bansa yung makausap natin, ma'am, tsaka sir.
And then, ang isa pa daw po nakikita rin na problem dito kasi kaya parang, kumbaga sabi nga nila, para medyo magkaroon ng pagtigil yung mga nangyayari na to, parusahan, pero walang nakikita, walang nakukulong as of now, diba, tungkol dito sa mga fake news na to. But NBI pointed out na nahihirapan sila doon sa sinatawag nila na dual criminality procedure, no, or principle, because sometimes dito sa atin may batas, doon sa ibang bansa wala naman.
Yep. And in fact, Ma'am Angela, nakakausap ko lang kay Director Melvin Matibag during the holidays, nag-breakfast pa kami niyan So there will be an upcoming partnership with the CICC and the NBI. Tama ko kayo, yung dual jurisdictional challenge natin because sa ibang bansa napaparusahan. And most of the vloggers are outside the country. Pero ang sinasabi ko nga sa kanya, how about kung yung mga nandito yung nag-amplify dito, we can identify, the CICC can identify, then with the partnership of the NBI, sila yung hahabol doon sa mga criminal na yun in country, yung mga nag-amplify o kaya kung saan nanggagaling yung context. Kasi even if the amplification goes outside of the country, sure kami yung context nag-originate dito sa bansa.
And then, paano niyo po natatrack down kung saan po talaga nag-originate yung source ng Facebook? Kasi sometimes you would see, hindi naman nila sinishare, kukunin lang nila yung content, gagawa sila ng sarili nila, but based on that fake news. Like for example, yung nangyari last week during the Araw ng Kagitingan or Day of Valor celebration or commemoration, diba, kumalat yung mga fake news na wala doon talaga si President Bongbong Marcos at talagang dahil malubha yung sakit niya. And even the news organizations were being attacked for covering the true health situation of the president.
Well, una-una, we have the tools naman po to detect both the origin of the fake news, kung sino yung mga nasa likod niyan, and yung network nila. Yun nga lang again, most of the networks we see, at parang na-adapt na nila to na their amplifications is outside the country. We can even state kung anong bansa parati yung nanggagaling yung fake news na yung amplification na yan So, yun yung nagiging problema namin. But again, for the local bloggers, I think nung napag-usapan namin ni Director Melvin yan, I think we should set an example by going after these local bloggers. Kasi hindi ibig sabihin na may sourcing ka, ibig sabihin na may sourcing ka na, halimbawa, sabi ni ganito, di umano, gumagano sila. But if you put your own spin to it, ano na yun creative mo na yun, sa'yo na yun.
You're responsible.
Na sa'yo yun
Oo. That's your accountability.
Yan
Oo.
Yeah.
Oo.
Well,
mahabang usapan po to.
For sure, maraming usapan. Siyempre, abangan natin iba pang mga steps na gagawin ng CICC together with the NBI para talagang magtulungan sila po kayo din na talagang masugpo itong pag-spread ng fake news. For the meantime, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras. Boy Paraiso, Executive Director of the CICC.
Maraming salamat po, Angela, Sir Diego. Thank you po.
Right. I also wanted to discuss sana yung paano yung kaso sa clickbait pero yung content totoo. Ang style kasi ng ibang vloggers, ang style kasi ng ibang vloggers, yung sa kasi alam lang din nagbabasa lahat ng tao So sa title pa lang tsaka sa picture, iba ang pagka-present ng news. Pero when you read it, they're telling the truth. So nagkakasuhan sila sa court, nakikita ng court yung content ng sabi ng totoo, 'di ba? So parang what can you do pag gano'n ng ang sitwasyon. Pero that's a long discussion, but hopefully we get to clear that up. But for now, that wraps up today's episode of News and Views.
Join us again tomorrow. I'm Angela Lagunsad Castro.
And I'm Angelo Castro III. We are One News.
All sides, all the time.